Hi, folks. In this episode, we're going to be talking about generative AI music. And this is a topic that I was not planning to talk about on the podcast because I hate generative AI music and I don't think it's that interesting. It's a big deal technologically, and certainly at this moment, it's a big deal in the music industry. My personal prediction is that it's going to blow over. It's going to be a fad like NFTs and VR, and it's not ultimately going to be that impactful. But at the moment, people are certainly having a lot of feelings about it. I was going to be content to just ignore it and wait for it to go away, but a couple of things happened in my life that made that harder. One of them is I'm teaching this class about the history of American popular music. And it has been a couple of years since I taught a class that had a significant writing component to it. Past few years, I've just been teaching music theory and oral skills where AI just does not play that big a role because the AI tools are not useful for that stuff. So I've been a little bit insulated from the effect that ChatGPT is having on teaching. But so I put up the class website for the history of pop music class and sent out an email saying, hi, everybody, welcome to the class. You do have an assignment that's due the first day. It's pretty low key. It's basically do a little reading about Stephen Foster, listen to the Al Jolson and Ray Charles recordings of Old Folks at Home and compare them and tell me what you think. And does Al Jolson sound like popular music to you? Why is he singing in fake Negro dialect? Compare Ray Charles' performance of the song to his. I'm not looking for like research paper level prose here. I wanted a 1-paragraph reaction. And within 6 hours of sending out this email, I got an assignment submission. I'm like, oh, wow, somebody's an eager beaver. And I opened it up and it was such obvious ChatGPT. And I put it in the detector and the detector said 100% AI generated. But even without doing that, it was so obvious. And that was infuriating. And I'm like, well, let's give this kid the benefit of the doubt because, yeah, it says in the syllabus, no AI usage, but who reads the syllabus? So I sent around an email saying, no AI usage, do not use it. I invited that student to redo the submission, and instead he dropped the class, which fine with me. But then I got another AI submission after sending out the email, and man, I am furious because, first of all, why cheat in a music class? What is the point? There's no economic benefit to studying music in college. The only reason to do it is because you think it's interesting. I genuinely don't understand. So yeah, I'm really, really mad about it. The other thing is I got invited a while ago to contribute a chapter to an edited volume about music technology in education. And they asked me to write the chapter about generative AI. And I was like, I don't want to write a chapter about generative AI in music education because my position is I don't think generative AI has any place in music education. But I was like, well, can I write the chapter from the perspective of I think it's terrible and a bad idea? And they're like, yeah, sure. But then I was procrastinating on it because I don't enjoy thinking about this subject. But then this happened, all this nonsense with my freaking students submitting ChatGPT for their homework assignments. And I got really, really mad. And I'm like, okay, it's not enough to just have this knee-jerk emotional reaction to AI and thinking that it's bad. I'm going to do the research. And I gathered a whole bunch of studies about how ChatGPT is the equivalent of eating lead paint chips for education. There's not a lot of research on the effect of generative AI on creative music making. Certainly not in education. There's not a lot of research on creative music making in education to begin with because there's not a lot of creative music making happening in education. Not a lot of music teachers have people write songs or make beats. And so there's even less research on how people might be using AI for that. So you can look in the episode description, and I've got links out to the research on using LLMs for writing and why that's a bad idea. But there's not a lot of research about generative AI in music. I mean, there's a lot of press about it, and certainly there's a lot of stuff about how it's impacting the music industry. But in terms of the music learning experience, so far there's mostly just people saying, oh, it might be useful for this, it might be useful for that, maybe we should use it for this. So instead, what I decided to do was some autoethnography. This is a qualitative research technique where you use the techniques of ethnography and ethnomusicology, but applied to your own experience. And this might seem not to be very objective, and it's not, but there are aspects of music making that are not really accessible by observing people or talking to them. You have to experience stuff yourself. And so what I figured I would do is generate a bunch of AI slop using Suno and not just look at the results of it, but look at the experience of it along the way. And so, yeah, we're going to be listening to a bunch of AI slop that I made. And I used Suno, first of all, because I have a particular loathing for Mikey Schulman, who's one of the founders of Suno, ever since he gave this interview in which he claimed that most people do not enjoy the process of music making.
It's not really enjoyable to make music now. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. You need to get really good at an instrument or really good at a piece of production software. I think the majority of people don't enjoy the majority of the time they spend making music.
Also, I think Suno is like pretty representative of these tools. It's not identical to Udio or Google Flow or some of the other things, but their core functionality is all basically the same. Yeah, I think Suno is like a reasonable stand-in. There's two ways you can produce music in Suno, and one of them is text prompts, and the other is audio prompts. So text prompts, it's like ChatGPT, right? You just explain in English what you want, and it generates it in response. So the first thing I tried to do was I tried to make a Fleetwood Mac song. I was like, give me a song that's like Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. And it said, oh, I can't do that. You can't ask for specific songs or specific artists. So then I tried to verbally like describe Fleetwood Mac. So I'm like, okay, 70s soft rock, female vocalist, sort of untrained, maybe kind of a nasal raspy tone, and then densely layered backing vocals and like really clear punchy drums and very clean production. And here's what I got.
You left your keys in the bowl like you meant to come back. I left the porch light on, but it only lit the crack. Your coat still hangs by the door, faded by the sun. I keep reaching for your name, then I let it come undone. We said it slow, we said it kind, still the room feels hollow. Since you crossed that line, it's over now, it's over now. We don't say forever, we just let it go. It's over now, it's over now.
I'm really amused by its lyrics. The line, "It only lit the crack," is such a weird thing to say. I keep reaching for your name and I let it come undone. That sounds like the lyrics of this kind of song, except it's like meaningless. And actually, I would be a little bit more open to this if it was more nonsensical and more meaningless, because "it lit the crack" is like almost nonsensical enough to be actually kind of interesting. But no, it's sort of like a Hallmark card, except it doesn't make enough sense. And I think the audio sounds pretty terrible. Like, not terrible in the sense of sounding fake. I mean, it sounds fake, but like, the problem is not that it sounds fake. The problem is that it sounds almost real, right? There's a bunch of it that I think is actually pretty plausible. It just is so boring. Jeez, like, every possible cliche of this kind of music that you could possibly use is in there, yeah? But then I'm like, okay, so let's give it something a little harder. I want the sound of Thelonious Monk. Now, I knew it was going to fail, but I was like, give me a 50s jazz, kind of smoky, noir, dissonant, bluesy, edgy jazz, and this is what I got.
Ash on the table, coffee gone cold, half-tilt halo on your hat of gold, laugh in the rafters, eyes on the door, you tap our riddles on that cracked dance floor. Midnight on 52nd Street, where the wrong notes feel like home. Every sideways.
So first of all, I did not ask for vocals. It just did that. I think this is pretty funny. Once again, like the lyrics are like nonsense. The phrase half tilt halo on your hat of gold is like almost nonsensical enough to almost be kind of interesting. Yeah, half tilt halo, it's got alliteration. Like it's almost kind of nice. It just doesn't mean anything. Cracked dance floor, that's almost interesting, right? Almost. But it's just so corny. When you ask it for stuff, it gives you multiple versions. So here's the other version.
Midnight on 52nd Street, where the wrong notes feel like home. Every sideways glance in time, every crooked chord I own. You lean in, say, play it strange. Twist the tune and bend the truth. Midnight on 52nd Street, where I misplace all my youth.
This is crazy. This is not even like it's major instead of minor. The line, every crooked chord I own. Every crooked chord I own. Oh, it's so awful. And like I've had people come back to me and say, okay, but like if you don't know anything about jazz and you're just hearing this at Starbucks or wherever, you wouldn't necessarily mind it, right? Like how much worse is this than like Michael Bublé? And okay, fair, right? Like most people don't know anything about jazz or particularly care about it. Is this any worse than Michael Bublé? I would argue that it is, because Michael Bublé, as bland and uninteresting as his music is, it doesn't sound this fake, and his lyrics might be boring, but at least they don't sound like a space alien. Yeah, I don't know. So then I thought I would give it something else that I knew it would fail at. I really love this singer named Tim Erickson, who does this like super bleak, minimalist folk music, but not in like the Pete Seeger sense, in the sense of traditional music from past centuries. And a lot of his songs are about industrial disasters and people being murdered.
Sad news has come to town. Sad news is carried. Some say my love is dead. Some say he's married. As I was pondering on this, I took to weeping. They stole my love away while I was sleeping.
So I was like, okay, give me a super minimalist folk ballad about a shipwreck, because that seems like a suitable Tim Erickson subject. Yeah. So here's what I got.
We left at low tide with a pale moon blade. The gulls kept watch on the work we made. Black water breathed at the pier's weak posts, and the old men spat like they knew the coast. Then the wind came in from the broken bend. It took our prayers and it twisted lifted them. The mast gave way with a splintered cry, and the sea stood up to meet our eyes. Hold the line, hold fast, don't let go.
This lady, I don't know, it sounds like the training data is drawing on Sinead O'Connor. The sort of minimal instrumentation is sort of okay, but then like once everything kicks in, it just sounds like a boring movie score. I like how all the language is sort of vaguely nautical without meaning anything. The mast gave way with a splintered cry. Okay, that's not terrible. Yeah. But then, and the sea stood up to meet our eyes. The sea stood up to meet our eyes. Okay. Yeah. And like, God, once it gets all big and melodramatic, I think that just sounds terrible. Text prompts for generative AI music, it's such a bad interface. Text prompts, that means that you have to verbally describe the thing that you want in English. And English is a blunt instrument for describing music, boy. It is really, really hard to verbalize what makes Thelonious Monk sound like Thelonious Monk. And meanwhile, all you have to do is listen to 10 seconds of it and you're like, oh, I completely understand what this guy is about. If I couldn't play you a recording of Thelonious Monk or Stevie Nicks or Tim Erickson, how would I describe it to you? I mean, I think I'm a pretty good writer and I don't know how I would do it. Suno does not only let you prompt it with text, it also lets you prompt it with audio. And that is a much more useful way of doing things. So first of all, you can just submit audio and have it remix it or extend it. That's not uninteresting. We'll get to some examples of that. Now, it does have copyright detection. Like, you can't give it copyrighted music, supposedly. Although I tried giving it the instrumental version of Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees. And it completely let me use that. I guess without the vocals in there, that slips past its copyright filter. Me and my older kid were messing around with this, and we were like, let's do Stayin' Alive as a video game boss battle. I think this is actually kind of great. Like, it's ridiculous, but in a fun way. Like, it's so silly that it goes all the way back around to being kind of cool. I don't know that I would want to listen to it more than once, but it's kind of fun, right? I do hate this as like a creative medium, but I do think it's interesting as a look into the way that it's exploring its training data and trying to match features of the input to stuff in the training data, right? So it's like, okay, video game boss battle, that means particular instrumentation, that means particular rhythmic feel, particular arrangements. And yeah, it's interesting to see it figure out the melodies and the rhythms and the chords in Stayin' Alive and then apply these sort of epic orchestral, big boomy drums and then electric guitar, because I guess enough video game soundtracks have electric guitar in them now. It's funny. Yeah, it's interesting. So then I thought, let's give it an audio prompt that will not match anything in its training data. Let's give it a piece of Renaissance lute music. So this is a Passacaglia by Alessandro Piccinini, written in 1639, performed by Ron McFarlane. And I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure Suno does not have any Renaissance lute music in its training data. So I asked it to extend this piece of music. And it did detect the pitches in it and the rhythms like really clearly. And it did a kind of a reasonable job of matching the melodies and the harmonies, but it clearly didn't know what to do with it stylistically. So first it extends it with this rolling triplet rhythm that's not in the original. And then it adds fiddle because I guess it's like, oh, it's acoustic. And so maybe it's vaguely folky or Celtic or something, which I actually think sounds kind of good. But then it finds its way into like a jig feel, which I don't know where it got that from. I guess it has a bunch of jigs in the training data. Maybe it has the Lord of the Rings soundtrack in the training data. And then the jig gets like super intense, like they're having like a rockin' party in the Shire. So then I figured, let me give it some of my music, right? Yeah, let's just see what it does with one of my tracks. This is a track called The Knowing of Some's Remix. It's a remix of a recording by Sikora, the great jazz saxophone player Sikora, who I had the pleasure of being in a band with many, many years ago. And her thing is recording solo free jazz on saxophone. I asked her, is it okay if I take some of these recordings and remix them and like put beats and stuff under them? And she was not enthusiastic about it because she doesn't like electronic music, but she was like, fine, do what you want. I don't care. She has this tune called The Knowing of Sums, and she let me do this remix of it. And I'm pretty proud of it. I think it sounds really good. So I gave this to Suno and I had it extended. It turned it into this vaguely exotic spy thriller soundtrack. It's not terrible. It's mid. I don't think I'm the world's best electronic music producer, but I do really like my stuff. It's personal. It does feel like genuine expression of my musical self. And I know that I'm just using Catherine's music and these beats and things that I'm programming in Ableton, but it does really feel like it's coming from me. And this spy thriller soundtrack just sounds like every spy thriller soundtrack. It doesn't feel personal. It feels like it has nothing to do with me. And like in a certain sense, the Suno output sounds better than my track. Okay, nobody likes this track except me. I put it on Bandcamp and I put it out on my social media and absolutely no one clicks on it or listens to it. And the few people who do click on it don't listen to the end. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. I make that stuff for me. And if no one else likes it but me, that's cool. If I had more serious commercial ambitions with music, you know, maybe Suno's output would be telling me something useful. Like maybe Suno would be telling me, this is more what people want. In fact, I'm pretty sure that if I took that Suno output and refined it or redid it with better sounds, I bet it would be more widely palatable. It's not an experiment that I'm going to carry out, but yeah, it's completely possible that its output is, quote, better than mine, unquote, if we're talking about accessibility or being interesting or appealing to people who are not me. And I guess what I'm learning is that I do not value other people liking my music that highly. Yeah.
It's not really enjoyable to make music now. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. You need to get really good at an instrument or really good at a piece of production software. I think the majority of people don't enjoy the majority of the time they spend making music.
So anyway, then I was like, you know what would be interesting if I just recorded myself singing and I use that as an audio prompt? Because one of the things that Suno does is you can give it an unaccompanied vocal and it will create an instrumental backing for it. So I was like, okay, let's do that. So I just recorded this on my computer mic. I improvised it off the top of my head. This is my song. This is my song. Let's hear what Suno does with my song. This is my song. This is my song. Let's hear what Suno does with my song. I put into Suno, this is an a cappella, please accompany it, but I guess I did it wrong because what it understood that I meant was please turn this into a cappella music.
This is my song. This is my song. Let's hear what Suno does with
my song. This is my song. This is my song. Let's see what Suno does with my song.
And I thought this was really lovely, man. Not aesthetically lovely. I think it sounds pretty terrible, but I'm so amused by the idea that it thought I wanted a fake Bobby McFerrin song. And like, when I say it sounds terrible, I mean timbrally terrible. Like it's got this creepy, uncanny valley fakeness to the vocals, but I do think the arrangement is pretty good. Like I like the harmonies. It interpreted my vague, poorly sung melody in this kind of nice way. So then what you can do is you can mash stuff up, right? You can take two things that you made and have Suno combine them. So what I did was I took my Knowing of Some's remix, my Catherine Sikora remix, and I had it mash it up with this fake Bobby McFerrin song. And I thought the results of that were pretty fascinating. That saxophone, the timbre is not that weird, I guess, but the Phrygian dominant, like that sort of Middle Eastern scale that it's doing is like a bit of a challenge because it doesn't really have a lot of smooth R&B that has that Phrygian dominant feeling. And I'm just very interested in its attempt to match its own R&B Boys to Men training data with this problem that I posed for it. And I actually think that this transition from my kind of exotic sounding saxophone part back to the sort of, regressing it to the mean of its training data is kind of interesting.
Let's see what Suno does with my song. This is my song. This is my song. Let's see what Suno does.
Like there's stuff in there that I think sounds kind of good. Not timbrely. I think it sounds really fake and creepy, but like I could imagine reconstructing that idea with my own sounds. Yeah. And I'm especially interested in this version of the output because it sounds like it's merging this scat solo vocal with the sound of the saxophone itself. It seems like it's combining the timbre of the voice and the saxophone. And again, I don't think it sounds good exactly because it's so fake, but it's not an uninteresting timbre. It's an idea that I could imagine experimenting with further. I just don't want it in the context of this completed Suno song. Now, Suno will, if you use the pro version, give you stems. And I could just take that vocal / saxophone in isolation and do further stuff with it. I'm not gonna, but I could. What I also liked about this particular version of the mashup is all of a sudden there's a beat shift and it turns into like a slow jam.
This is my song. This is my song. That's here what Sundown does with my song. This is my song. This is my song. That's here what Suno does with my song. This is my song.
I did not ask for that, and there's nothing in the audio that I input that suggests that feel. It just came up with that itself. And I don't think it sounds great, but I do think it's kind of cool that it just came up with that. I don't know. It's funny. Yeah, it's almost like a parody of something. So I know that most of you listening to this also hate AI, but I know that not all of you do. And I do have a couple of friends who are neutral on it and a couple of acquaintances who are even kind of enthusiastic about it. The argument goes like this. Ethan, you of all people should be open to this because you are like Mr. Electronic Music and you're Mr. Sampling and Mr. Remixing. You think it's okay to take a recording of your friend playing the saxophone and turn that into, quote, your own, unquote, music. What is the difference between remixing your friend Catherine and just generating stuff with Suno? And I thought that was a really good question. I mean, nobody has asked me that in the specific context of remixing Catherine, but I certainly have made enough music that consists entirely of samples of existing music. I'm a huge fan of sample-based hip-hop and dance music. I think that stuff is really great. So morally, what is my problem with Suno if I think that sample-based hip-hop and dance music are okay? And, I had to really think about that because it's a fair point. So one easy answer would be to say, well, De La Soul sounds good and the Orb sounds good and all the Suno slop sounds bad. But that's not entirely it because first of all, not all of the Suno stuff sounds bad. I think most of it does, but there's moments that are interesting and I could imagine developing some of this stuff into something that actually sounds kind of good, especially if you combine it with like humans playing instruments or stuff that you do more by hand or humans singing. I'm glad that I tried doing this myself because what I realized is it's not so much the product that bothers me, it's the process. The process does not feel like producing electronic music. And it took me a while to figure out what it did feel like. And at first I'm like, really, it's not creating anything. All it's doing is it's taking pieces of its training data and recombining them. And so what I really feel like I'm doing is searching through its training data. Yeah. And the experience feels more like scrolling through the loop library in GarageBand or Logic or Ableton than it feels like making stuff. And I am actually an advocate for the GarageBand and Logic and Ableton loop libraries as a platform for creativity. And so it would seem like, well, if I think it's okay to use Apple loops in your original music, why don't I think it's okay to use Suno? And the answer is the Apple loops are unfinished. They're incomplete. They don't come to you as finished songs. They come to you as a 2-bar drum loop, a 1-bar bass line, or whatever. And they invite you to do more stuff to them because they're unfinished. And the ones that I like the least are the ones that are like the most fully produced out. And I think that those Logic and GarageBand loops are at their most useful when you go in there and chop them up and move the pieces around. And they're at their least useful when you just sort of use them out of the box. And the same goes for like splice loops and things like that. That, many of those splice loops sound really good, but they do sound kind of bland if you're just sort of assembling them together like Legos, and you don't really get the good results unless you really go in there and chop and flip them and add other stuff. Yeah. And with Suno, it's hard to do that. You don't have granular control over its output. You have to verbally describe stuff or just submit audio and see what you get. Now, the pro version, it does export stems, and you can go in there at the single note level and adjust stuff. But you have to know what you want in advance. What you get in the first place, you can only get it by like requesting things. And that means that you have to know what you want in advance. And I realized like that is not how I work. I very rarely make music with a specific goal in mind. Usually it's just I open up the DAW or I pick up the guitar and like just kind of see what happens. I just start throwing samples around. I just start playing notes or riffs or chords and just discover what it's going to be in the process of doing it. And yeah, Suno, you can refine your prompts and you can massage stuff and you can go into the output and edit at the single note level if you're using the pro version, but you can't really discover things. It has to be intentional. It feels more like emailing with a producing partner who is very technically skilled and very unimaginative. You can't get it to make mistakes. You can't get it to use bad taste. Well, except insofar as everything it puts out is in bad taste. But you know what I mean? Like, you can push it into less commonly explored regions of its training data. You can get stuff that's relatively unusual, but you can't get it to step outside of its training data. Yeah?
It's not really enjoyable to make music now. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. You need to get really good at an instrument or really good at a piece of production software. I think the majority of people don't enjoy the majority of the time they spend making music.
This author named Margaret Bowden, in talking about algorithmic creativity, says, okay, if you're going to determine whether computers can be creative, you have to define what creativity is. So she defines creativity as the ability to come up with ideas or artifacts that are new, surprising, and valuable. That last word is the most important one because what she's saying is novelty is not creative necessarily. It has to be valuable novelty. But so her definition intentionally does not require the expression of biographical interiority. She's not saying that creativity has to come from your subjective experiences or emotions. It just requires the production of ideas or artifacts. Because what she's arguing is that computers can be creative. So she goes further and breaks down creativity into three different forms. There is combinatorial creativity, where you're making unfamiliar combinations of existing ideas. And Suno is very, very good at that. There is exploratory creativity, where you're exploring conceptual spaces. So there's the range of possible ideas and you're exploring among them. And Suno is also pretty good at that, especially if you prompt it creatively. But then there's transformational creativity, where you're not just exploring a conceptual space, you are transforming it. You are changing its rules. And that is a thing that Suno cannot do, and to my knowledge, no generative AI tool can do. That's a thing that is the exclusive province of humans. Suno is limited to its training data. And not only that, but it's limited to the correlations, the statistical likelihoods within its training data. And presumably it could recombine things in the training data in ways that are wrong. And it's presumably been carefully programmed to not do that because they want the results to sound musical. They want the results to sound good. And most of the time when you're questioning the assumptions, when you're questioning the rules, usually that sounds bad. Like the rules exist for a reason. The conventions exist for a reason. Most of the time, if you're genuinely questioning the basic assumptions, it's because you don't know what you're doing. However, the really big ideas, the really genuinely remarkable ideas are the ones that come from questioning the basic rules and assumptions. So for example, if you trained Suno on every kind of popular music that was made in the 1970s, it could output very plausible sounding punk, disco, country rock. It's going to sound kind of fake and cheesy, but like you could imagine it getting better at that, right? But what it will not do is come up with hip hop. Yeah, because hip hop is not just an extension of disco and rock and funk. It's completely changing the rules and assumptions of popular music. It's not saying, how do we find new and different melodies? It's just saying we're not going to have melodies at all. It's not saying like we're going to find new and interesting ways to play and record instruments. It's saying we're not going to use instruments. We're just going to use turntables and samplers and drum machines. There's just not a way that Suno could make that kind of leap. And the reason that I think AI music is going to blow over as a thing is that it is so boring. It's so predictable. All it can do is reshuffle its training data. And yeah, it's interesting that it can like make these plausible sounding copies of existing styles of music. And it's kind of interesting that it can generate new stuff that isn't offensively terrible, but like the novelty of it wears off fast, boy. And the experience of using it does not feel like creativity to me. It doesn't feel like expression. It feels like shopping. Yeah, it feels like consuming, not producing. And if I'm going to be shopping, I would rather be shopping for stuff that is better. I don't want to generate fake sea shanties. I would rather just go listen to Tim Erickson and other people who sound like Tim Erickson. I don't want fake cheesy 50s jazz. I just want to go listen to more actual 50s jazz, right? Now, is there a practical benefit to using Suno? Sure. What if I had to make just a bunch of background lo-fi beats for studying on deadline for some professional reason? You know, I guess it would be useful for banging that stuff out. But why would anybody ever hire me to do that when they could just prompt Suno themselves? Seeing all these pop producers and songwriters talking about how useful it is, but I'm like, I guess so. But then if it really is that useful, then why do we need professional songwriters and producers at all? And I think what people are going to find out is that it's not that useful. Like, it's useful for imitating stuff, but it's not going to be innovative. Eventually the novelty wears off. I did this experiment in a class where we compared the Velvet Sundown, which was the first really prominent AI band.
Dust on the wind, boots on the ground, smoke in the sky, no peace found. Rivers run red, the drums roll slow. Tell me, brother, where do we go? Raise your hand, don't look away. Sing out loud, make them pay. March for peace, not for pride. Let that flag turn with the tide.
And it's really clearly just trained on like Neil Young and Bruce Springsteen. I had this graduate seminar on music technology and education. And so we listened to the Velvet Sundown, and then we listened to Neil Young.
Think I'll pack it in and buy a pickup, take it down to LA, find a place to call my own and try to fix up, start a brand new day. The woman I'm thinking of, she loved me all up, but I'm so down today. She's so fine, she's in my mind, I hear her calling.
And I asked people, which one do you like better? The class had all these classical music people in it. And the classical music people were all like, we like the AI better. They didn't like Neil Young. They thought he was sloppy. They didn't like his cracked, straining vocals. Yeah, they found it kind of off-putting. And meanwhile, the rock fans in the room were like, oh my God, of course Neil Young. We love Neil Young. And the exact qualities that the classical people find annoying about him are the exact qualities that make the rock people love him. He sounds like a person. Yeah. That straining, cracked voice is a marker of authenticity and realness and relatableness. And that disturbed me briefly, but then I'm like, okay, but the classical music people don't like rock to begin with, and they don't care about it. They're not going to be actively seeking out Velvet Sundown because they just don't care about this kind of music at all. And meanwhile, people who love rock are not going to prefer Velvet Sundown to Neil Young. I cannot imagine somebody being willing to spend $1,000 on Velvet Sundown tickets the same way that people are apparently quite willing to spend $1,000 to see Neil Young or Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. Now, I do have friends in the music business who are like, okay, but like most people aren't active fans. Like if it's just on that sort of level of playing at Starbucks or playing at the Gap, no one cares that deeply. And that's taking money out of the pockets of people. And I'm like, yeah, short term, but like, imagine how rancid the vibes would be in Starbucks if they were playing this AI slop. I feel like with these spaces, the thing that differentiates one coffee shop from another or one clothing store from another is not necessarily the merchandise. Coffee pretty much tastes like coffee wherever you go. It's pretty much the vibe of the place. It's how cool the place is. It's the status that the brand confers. And I know Starbucks is not like the coolest place in the world, but like they have worked really hard to establish a brand and a vibe. And if the brand gets associated with AI slop, that's going to hurt them. I just don't see it happening. Now, outside the United States, I know people feel differently about AI music. I can't speak to every world culture about this. I know some people are more open to it than we are, but I can definitely say people really, really hate AI here. And yes, you can fool people who are listening inattentively, but when they find out it's AI, they tend to be very angry. And I've had the AI proponents in my circle say, well, that just shows people don't know what they're talking about, because before they knew it was AI, if they liked it, then maybe they don't hate AI at all. Maybe they just hate the idea of it. And I'm like, okay, but the idea of the music is part of the music. Like it's not only about the sonic artifact out of context, like the story of the music and the identities of the people who are making the music, or at least the imagined characters of the people making the music, the imagined narratives, whatever you want to say, affects the reception history a lot. Yeah. Like R. Kelly's music sounds exactly the same now as it did before we found out what his whole deal was. But like you cannot play R. Kelly now. Or you can try to slip it past people, but if they find out that it's R. Kelly, you're going to get people thinking differently about you. You can't separate the narrative and the context of the music from the experience of hearing the music. Like you can fool people temporarily, but then that just makes them angrier once they find out they've been fooled. Yeah. And so this is why I think it's going to blow over. I'm sure the music industry will find a use for it, especially the less creative and less innovative people in the music industry. I'm sure there's going to be a place for this sort of filler. But I mean, you know, derivative, boring slop has been a feature of popular culture forever, right? Long before there was AI, there was boring, committee-driven, consensus-seeking, middle-of-the-road pop music, right? That will always be with us. And AI is certainly a more efficient way of making that stuff, but that's not the stuff that really gets to people. And it's also not the stuff that really makes money long-term, right? Fleetwood Mac is really weird. Yeah, Stevie Nicks is extremely weird. The Beatles are really weird. Michael Jackson's really weird. Anybody who's ever been remotely culturally significant has, without exception, been really weird. And yeah, you can be moderately popular for a certain amount of time by being an imitator, but over the long term, okay, the difference between the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean is that the Beach Boys are really weird and Jan and Dean sound like an AI that's been trained on the Beach Boys, right? Everybody knows who the Beach Boys are, but you would have to be pretty deep into the history of 60s pop and rock to even know who Jan and Dean are at this point, yeah? I just don't see it persisting. Now, maybe that's cope. Maybe that's wishful thinking on my part because I also want it to disappear. I want it to fail because I hate it. But yeah.
It's not really enjoyable to make music now. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. You need to get really good at an instrument or really good at a piece of production software. I think the majority of people don't enjoy the majority of the time they spend making music.
One thing that all of this Suno slop has made me appreciate is how important it is that good electronic music sounds electronic. Yeah. That attempts to emulate the sound of humans playing instruments, at best, you can fool people who aren't listening that closely, but at worst, you just go straight into the uncanny valley and sounds horrible. You know what sounds good is stuff that just sounds electronic. So, for example, the Super Mario Brothers soundtrack, which was created in 1985 on unbelievably primitive sound equipment, still sounds great. It's not trying to sound like humans playing instruments. I mean, back in 1985, there was no way to do that anyway. But the advantage is Koji Kondō, when he was writing the score, was like, well, I've got a triangle wave, a square wave, a noise generator, and that's it. So how do I make this sound good? Yeah. And as a result, this music is still fresh as a daisy, whereas AI stuff from 2 years ago just sounds ridiculous. Yeah. I love electronic music. I think it's great. And my wish is that people use the computer to make stuff that sounds like it comes from the computer. And if you want the sound of humans playing instruments and singing, maybe just get some humans to play some instruments and have some humans sing. That would be my wish. And I've also seen the argument that Suno increases accessibility, that if you don't have the time or the talent or the equipment to produce music, you can do it with Suno. And if using Suno brings you joy and meaning and creative fulfillment, that's great. You should use it. I think that it should not be considered to be the same category of thing as writing a song or singing a song. I'm open to it being considered a legitimate art form. I haven't heard any Suno output that I needed to hear twice, but I'm open to the possibility. But I can tell you experientially, it does not feel like writing a song or singing a song because it doesn't entail taking any risk. The whole reason that we admire singers and songwriters is that you got to stick your neck out. You got to open yourself up to judgment. And the more personal and emotionally direct your music is, the scarier it is to open yourself up to judgment. And I don't open myself up to much judgment at all in my stuff. And still, it did take me many, many years to work up the nerve to like put things out there. And I have nothing but admiration for the people who really do emotional truth telling in the music. And the thing is, as for the accessibility argument, okay, if you want to like really do lavish, complex production, Fleetwood Mac style, Pink Floyd style, Michael Jackson in the 80s, yeah, that's expensive. But if you just want to write a song, it's not that hard. Small children do it, right? In fact, if you're around small children, you can't stop them from making up songs. If you just want to express yourself, you barely need anything. Singing a cappella has worked fine for tens of thousands of years. You can learn one chord on the guitar or the ukulele and you're on your way. You can just thump on a bucket or a table, you're on your way. It's not that hard. Like the DAWs, yeah, they have a learning curve and some of them are expensive, but like they're not that expensive and it's not that hard. If you're really determined, you can just do it. Like I don't know what to say. Like it's definitely difficult to like take the emotional risk. That is hard. But once you've committed to doing that, yeah, getting stuff to be polished and getting it to sound like it's ready for the radio, that costs money and takes time. But like if you just want to have ideas and express them, record voice memos on your phone. It's really not that hard. And speaking for myself, I would rather hear your voice memo than your Suno slop because I just want to know it's you in there. Yeah, I just want to know it's you. Like the whole point is to like create community between people and share feelings between people. In one of the studies I was reading about songwriting, this person's student was saying, okay, I don't consider myself to be a musician as a songwriter. I consider myself to be an artist, because a musician shares music with people and an artist shares themselves, right? And I think sharing music with people is very beautiful, and Suno is an interesting way to do that. But if you're going to share yourself, you got to share yourself. And I don't think AI is useful for that. Thank you very much for listening.
It's not really enjoyable to make music now. 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 To make music now. It's not really enjoyable to make music now. It's not really enjoyable to make music now. To make music now. To make music now. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of practice. You need to get really good at an instrument or really good at a piece of production software. You need to get really good at an instrument or really good at a piece of production software. Production software. You need to get really good at an instrument or really good at a piece of production software. You need to get really good at an instrument or really good at a piece of production software.